بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا وحبيبنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. So last time we recited up to ayah number 44 from Surat AlAhzab, and today inshallah we'll continue from ayah number 45. It's page 424 from if you have a regular Madani version of the Quran or copy of the Quran. So Surat AlAhzab, just a quick reminder at the beginning of every halaqah, just so everyone knows what we're doing, is the first surah in a cluster of surahs that begin with Surat AlAhzab and end with Surat Al-Zumar, and their focus is on the concept of submission, of obedience, of ta'ah and Islam, istislam to the command and the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the concept, or that is the general theme of these group of surahs, this cluster of surahs. Surah Al-Ahzab is the first, and it is by far the longest and probably the most important, because it talks about obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, submitting to His will when things are extremely difficult, when it's especially hard to do so. Other surahs are going to talk about it from a different perspective. You'll see the richness of the different perspectives that the other surahs are going to offer. But this one is quite focused. It's talking about submitting, obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when it's really hard to do so. And it gives different examples of what difficulty actually means. It begins with an introduction to that, and we spent a number of halaqah just trying to explain the introduction. And then the first example was the actual battle of the Confederates, and it was obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a time of extreme fear. So when you're put between being a coward or being brave, and obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and being brave when you're extremely scared was the first example. And the Quran had a 2.5 page or 3 page long psychological analysis of all the Muslims who were there at that time and how they behaved. The second example was more personal to the Prophet ﷺ. It talked about his wives and their choices. They had to accept the fact that they were going to live with him ﷺ with no financial growth potential with him ﷺ, which was something very difficult, because ﷺ made a choice. He wasn't poor. He just made a choice not to live a luxurious lifestyle, and for a good reason that we now today understand much better. And for them to accept that, to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to stay with the Prophet ﷺ, even when that is extremely uncomfortable for them, was a choice that they ended up making. And then the chapter after that talked about issues of women within the deen, issues of their a dress code, behavior, their weight within Islam, and all these things are, as you listen to them, they're very uncomfortable things to talk about. They're awkward. They're just not your piece of cake. It's not the thing that you come hoping to listen to so that you grow spiritually, even though we do. Even though when we did learn about them, we did grow spiritually and educationally and Islamically, but they're just difficult, and there was a lesson to learn. And then after that, the central ayah of the surah, وَمَا كَانَ لِمُؤْمِنٍ وَلَا مُؤْمِنَةٍ إِذَا قَضَى اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ أَمْرًا أَن يَكُونَ لَهُمُ الْخِيَرَةُ مِنْ أَمْرِهِمْ. And it's never been acceptable or permissible for a believer, whether male or female, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives a decree or gives a command, for them to have an option, for them to say, well, it's optional, I can do it or not do it. If you're a true believer, that's not how things work. The moment Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives a command, you accept it. The chapter after that talked about another personal problem in his life, and this time extremely awkward. This time the Quran is actually talking about probably the most difficult thing that he went through from a psychological perspective, like the distress that he suffered regarding the divorce of Zayd and Zainab, and then his marriage of Zainab was almost unparalleled. Maybe just by we can maybe just draw an analogy or compare it to when Aisha radiallahu anha, they said something about Aisha, right? But that was a different type of course that's a different example. You can see how these examples differ, so they're not the same. What happened to Aisha was something of sabr. He had to show perseverance. It wasn't about ta'ah, wasn't about obedience. I see how things, there are different trials that we go through. That's why that story is not in Surat Al-Ahzab. It's in a different surah that talks about something different. But here it was the Prophet ﷺ obeying the command of Allah, announcing his marriage to Zainab, even though he knew the backlash from Arabia was going to be horrible. It would be very difficult to deal with. And he had a lot of haraj, and we saw the word number of times coming after that. The ayat after that were like a break, from all these stories that are very personal and very difficult, and these awkward topics to talk about where there's a lot of discomfort, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called upon the mu'mins, which we talked about last time. اذكروا الله ذكرا كثيرا. Remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, much remembrance. or many times, or for long periods, or in vast amounts. However you want to understand it. وَسَبِّحُوهُ بُكْرَةً وَأَصِيلًا, and exalt him subhanahu wa ta'ala in the morning and the evening. And if you're wondering why that came specifically there, well, that's the best place for these ayat to exist. The best place in the Quran, by far, is the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the knowledge of Allah, to put it right there, right between all these stories that talk about such difficulty in obeying His command. Sometimes it's very hard, or uncomfortable, or it causes you distress, or you don't understand it, or you don't like it, or maybe deep down inside for some reason you don't agree with it, regardless of the reason of why. The ayat of dhikr come. Why? Because that is how you get over your distress. If you struggle with any command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you get over it by continuously remembering Him within your day, meaning every time you make a choice, every time you're dealing with a decision, you remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you remember His command, you ask yourself whether this is the right thing to do, whether this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala something you would want or not, and you do dhikr, meaning you're continuously reminding your nafs of Allah by doing tasbih, or istighfar, or tahleel, or hawqala, or any form of tasbih that you know. The more you do it, the less distress you find, the less discomfort you find in following the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you find something that you struggle with, that the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala regarding that, or the command, or the ruling, the hukum shar'i that we have, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala views, if you find that hard, anything at all, if you find something hard, then just increase the amount of remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you will see how that will change. I'm not saying it's like magic, I'm saying it is. Just go ahead. Just remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala more on a daily basis, before your decisions, before your choices. It's very important that we see both, we have a proper balance for that. Dhikr is a very specific command, it's very important, but it's used in two different ways. There's the tasbih, where you're taking and you're repeating the tasbih, which is a very important part. But then there's remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as you go through your day, as you're making decisions. Do you remember Him, or is He out of that equation and He exists somewhere else? Meaning it's a boxed matter. You have its limitations. You sit here, you remember Allah, and then you leave that and you walk out of the masjid, and now He's not a part of this equation anymore. And you live your life, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is isolated from that. And then you come back and now remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the concept of it is that it works everywhere. It's something you do inside, more specifically, more profoundly, in a more isolated and exclusive manner based on a relationship. So you sit down, you make dhikr, you do tasbih, and then within your life, as you go through your life, you remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala every time you do something. And if you can do that, then inshallah you'll achieve the goal, which is you won't have distress anymore towards any of His commands. And that's what I talked about in detail. Actually, last time we only read basically a few ayat, maybe 3 or 4, maybe a couple of lines. And then after that is the reasoning. هُوَ الَّذِي يُصَلِّي عَلَيْكُمْ. The reason that you remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is because as you do, every time you do, He sends His blessings and His rahmah and His love and His mercy and His facilitation and His ease upon you. And His malaika do the same. And He removes you from a state of darkness to a state of enlightenment. Because He has always been Rahim subhanahu wa ta'ala, merciful with the mu'mins, with those who believe. تَحِيَّتُهُمْ يَوْمَ يَلْقَوْنَهُ سَلَامٌ. The day that you meet Him subhanahu wa ta'ala, it will be peace. The word will be peace. Why? Because what's the opposite of distress deep inside? It's peace. If you're distressed on something, about something you're anxious about, if it's bothering you deep inside, the opposite, what you're hoping, is for that relief. Peace. تَحِيَّتُهُمْ يَوْمَ يَلْقَوْنَهُ سَلَامٌ. You'll be granted peace the day you meet Him. وَعَدَّ لَهُمْ أَجْرًا كَرِيمًا. And they were prepared for them. It's a very unique and beautiful reward. Okay, so that was up to ayah number 44. We will continue inshallah from ayah number 45, where what I tried to explain last time, but we didn't get this far, is that after two stories where his personal life, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was put on display for a few moments, meaning we got to hear about how he, alayhi salatu, his wives were not too happy with certain aspects of his financial choices, where he was in distress, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, regarding a decision or a choice he had to make, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What may come to your mind for a moment, meaning what you may think of just for a split second that maybe Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is making mistakes, meaning you may question for a moment if your iman isn't clear, or if you don't have a proper understanding of who he is, alayhi salatu wasalam, you may question his status for a moment. So immediately the ayat after that was there to fix it. Just so that we're clear on things of who he is, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what status he carries, alayhi salatu wasalam, within this world, and it is positioned there because there are still two more stories about his personal life, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we're still going to talk about issues of going into his home and eating his food, and so we're going to enter his house, alayhi salatu wasalam, still. So there has to be that clarification, and we'll find that a lot in the Quran. I mean, wherever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about a mistake or a lack of proper prioritizing or something, or ijtihad, meaning he thought about he thought about something, it wasn't clear whether it was right or left, he made a choice, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him that no, you should have done the other one. There's always an ayah to talk about his status, just in case we ever forget or we miss the cue, or we think that maybe alayhi salatu wasalam is a flaw, or is at fault, and he isn't, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He never was. Okay, so we will start inshallah with ayah number 45. These are very beautiful ayats. Everyone has read them before and memorized them before, and inshallah the meaning will be very relevant. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها النبي إنا أرسلناك شاهدا. So we have to pay attention to the mudud. So every time there's a mad, so just look at it for a moment. I can cue it for you as I go along when I'm reading. As you will see that there's a med. The med looks like a cowboy hat, like it's on top of an alif or a waw or a ya. Whenever you see it, mostly they're 4 counts. So you can do 4 counts on your knee. That's what our teachers or our scholars used to tell me to do when I was a kid. I still do it sometimes when I feel I'm off cue, or my tone is I'm not following the beats properly. You can always do that. Each one is 4 counts unless I tell you otherwise, and I will. Meaning if it's 6, I'll tell you it's 6. But besides that, it's usually always 4. And trying to look for the ghunan, like an-nabiyyu. Inna, that's 2 counts each. So try to keep up with that. So we'll continue. Inna arsalnaka shahidan wa mubashiran wa nadhira. وداعيا إلى الله بإذنه وسراجا منيرا. وبشر المؤمنين بأن لهم من الله فضلا كبيرا. ولا تطع الكافرين والمنافقين ودع أذاهم. وتوكل على الله وكفى بالله وكيلا. Okay, يا أيها النبي. Now the Prophet ﷺ is called upon again. He was never called upon ﷺ in the Quran with his name, unlike all the other prophets. Ya Adam, wa Ya Nuh, Ya Ibrahim, wa Ya Isa, wa Ya Musa, all called by their names alayhim as-salatu was-salam ajma'in, except him ﷺ. It was always Ya ayyuha al-rasulu, Ya ayyuha al-nabiyyu, Ya ayyuha al-muzammilu, Ya ayyuha al-muddathir, only called with ayyuha before it. And when you say the word ayyuha, and linguistically that means you are showing a certain level of respect. When you say ayyuha before something, for the Arabs, when you hear ya ayyuha, then that means someone's trying to respect you. So if you're walking and someone doesn't know you, there's 2 ways for him to call upon you, or there's many ways, but these are 2 examples. You can say ya rajul, and that way you don't know whether what's coming next is going to be appropriate or not. And you can say, Ya ayyuha rajul, and now you know the person behind you is looking to speak to you in a respectful way. So these little changes in the Arabic language mean something. So Ya ayyuha, using that before, meaning he is looking to speak to him sallallahu alaihi wasallam with utmost respect. Yes.
What about Ya ayyuhalladhina kafaru?
There you go, exactly. قل يا أيها الكافرون. No, قل يا أيها الكافرون. يا أيها الذين أوتوا الكتاب. So what that actually means in the Quran is that there's a certain level of respect that they're being addressed with. Meaning they're being acknowledged as a group. What it means is they're being acknowledged as a group, that they have an entity, they are someone, right? The point of it is not just to trash everything that they are, but there's a respect to that. Yes, maybe you don't believe in what we believe in, so you have an entity. قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ means gives them the description. Meaning this is not a curse word. I'm not calling you a name, أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ. I'm saying that this is the description of your group. And so that's actually a very valid point, and it's important in the Quran that yes, we don't agree with them, we don't like them, we don't think what they're doing is right, but we still respect that they're an entity, that they're a group, and this is not a curse word. The word kafir, sometimes we use it as a curse word. If you say, right? So in the Quran, no, it's not. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not using it to curse someone out. It's Ya ayyuha alladhina kafaru as a description. You are someone who disbelieved in this, so you're a kafir in this. Just like someone who's not a Muslim would call me a kafir because I don't believe in what he believes in. So he's not cursing me, it's just a description of what I am towards his beliefs. And that's a description of what he is toward my set of beliefs. So the Quran it's a very accurate thing, and I've done something like that before, but since you brought that up, that's something in the Quran that you need to pay attention to. That the Ya ayyuha, even when they're talking to those who are groups that we don't necessarily agree with. We don't agree with, and that's clear. And actually the ayah is saying specifically that you're not supposed to agree with them, but they're still a group. They're acknowledged as people with choices, and it's a description, not a curse. Yeah. So Ya ayyuhan nabiyyu, O Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, inna arsalnaka, indeed we have sent you. And now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 descriptions of him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, of his character and of his job. And these are very beautiful descriptions. Today we may take a bit longer just explaining these ayat because of their beauty. Again, in the midst of surahs that are that are very, very heavy in content, surahs that have a lot of topics that are difficult to speak of, Surat AlAhzab probably ranking up there with the first 2 or 3. There's always going to be within the middle of them ayat that are just beautiful. They're just breathtaking. Why? Because it's just so that we don't get too caught up with the technicalities and the mechanics of things. Because it's one segment or one chapter of rulings, or one chapter of difficult topics after the other. It may harden your heart. It may do qaswa fil qalb. You may after a while feel that this is just one ruling after the other. It's just do, don't, this is right, this is wrong. You have to act like this, you can't act like that. You may lose that connection. So there has to be ayat of pure beauty somewhere in the middle. And that's why some of the most beautiful ayat we have don't exist in Makki surahs, which are surahs that are focused on the spirituality of the deen, of the character building, on al-akhirah, talking about Yawm al-Qiyamah. Some of the most beautiful ayat you have in the Quran are in a Madani surah. In a surah that is talking about just rulings, and then you have one of the most beautiful ayat in the Quran. At the end of Surah Al-Ma'idah, some of the most beautiful verses ever. The story of Isa couldn't be more beautiful at the end of Surah Al-Ma'idah. The end of Surah Al-Baqarah, the midst of Ali Imran, and as you go along, you find ayat that are just amazing, people like listening to time and time again. The reason being is that in the Madani surahs, there's so many rulings, there's so many harsh commands and denials from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that sometimes that you could misunderstand all that, maybe feel a bit surrounded by all these rulings. So there has to be that aspect of love and spirituality put in the middle. So here are some of the nicest ayat. Ya ayyuhan nabiyyu. Of course Surah Al-Ahzab has at the end as well something just as heavy, if not even heavier. Inna arsalnaka shahida. First of all, we have sent you, indeed we have sent you shahida. Alright. So what does shahida mean? And the word shaheed and the plural shuhada, we often use them as martyr, or someone who died for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or gave his life. Sometimes we use the word witness, right? And then when you ask, okay, what does witness mean? Then the traditional answer that is not fully wrong, but not fully right either. It loses most of the beauty of the word. Is that Yawm al-Qiyamah there'll be a witness that you didn't do it. But when you think about it, how is he a witness, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if he wasn't here with us? How can he be a witness towards my deeds or yours or the deeds of others if he wasn't there to actually witness them sallallahu alaihi wasallam personally. And it's kind of a stretch to think that he is watching each and every one of us sallallahu alaihi wasallam at every moment. That is the act of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. But he is a witness, alayhi salatu wasalam, just not that way. He is a witness sallallahu alaihi wasallam, very much he is, but differently, a different type of witness. And this understanding, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ وَيَكُونَ الرَّسُولُ عَلَيْكُمْ شَهِيدًا. So the concept of shahid and shaheed and shuhada is in the Quran many, many times. And I'm going to explain to you the basic idea, and from that basic idea, the other understandings that we have exist. So the concept of him being a witness, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the concept of a martyr being a martyr in the word shaheed comes from one basic idea that I think we've missed in a lot of cases. How is he a shahid, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, upon us? How is he a shaheed on us, alayhi salatu wasalam? By being able to practice the manhaj, by being able to follow the command. That is how he's a witness. What do I mean? You see, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent this. There's a lot of rules here in terms of what you're supposed to do and what you're not supposed to do. Now, do they work? Do they work? How do you know they work? How do you know that putting them all together actually works? Because that's our argument. That's what I say. We get on the minbar and we start telling people, you need to behave like this and act like this and stop doing that and do this, more of this, and then things will thrive and get better. How do I know that? Based on what evidence do I have that is the truth? His life, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He is the witness. See? You can do it. He did it. Ya Rabb, I can't do this. You told me no zina. I said, all right, fine. You said me no khamr. All right, fine. You told me no riba. Fine. No, Ya Rabb, no. What can I do? This doesn't work. It's impossible. I can't do it, Ya Rabb. It's impossible. What about him? He did it. Look at him. He did it, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Worse conditions than you. But no, he didn't have what I had. He didn't have the peer pressure. He wasn't as poor as I was. He wasn't, oh, let's take a look. Oh, look at that. Oh, look at this. All the messed up circumstances. Just like you, actually worse than you. Let's take a look at his. He's the witness, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, he is a witness, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in that, and so are we. In the same sense. Meaning, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to judge people on earth today, and for there to be Jannah and Nar, and for there to be reward, and we have to prove that this works. And if we can't prove this works, then judgment will be flipped. He can't judge those who didn't do it because they had no example of it actually happening. They have no evidence that it would work. How do they know this works? Just they're going to take our word for it? Would you take our word for it? If you're an outsider looking in, you would take our word for this being the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let's say you're not interested, you're not someone who's interested in the actual details of the, you're going to base your judgment on results and consequences. You want to base your judgment on, let me see. You say it works, you guys are practicing it, true? You guys are following it, let us see. No, you don't seem much better than us in anything. I can't really see how this is better. And if understanding the problem with this, understanding the danger behind it, we are shuhada in that sense. وَلِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ. We are witnesses in that sense in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In that meaning, He sent this book. There has to be those to practice it to prove that it works, so that He can tell others it worked. You say, well, maybe we shouldn't do it so that no one gets judged negatively. Yeah, but we will. See, that's the whole problem, that those who were given the chance to actually practice it and did not, because then He'll tell us, well, you should have made it work. Ya Rabb, well, we tried and it didn't work. And then He'll show us the Prophet ﷺ. Now you understand why he's a shahid. See, it worked for him. It worked for the ones with him. Why didn't you do it like he did it? It works. It works. You just didn't make it work. It was your problem. And we're returned to Him ﷺ and all the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who came before him. That this works. And that's the meaning of shahid. And from that, we use the word witness. So he was an example. Shahid, if you study Arabic language, and they want to give you an example of how this grammatical stance works, he'll use, if you're reading a book, it's called وَشَاهِدُهُ مِنَ الشِّعْرِ, and the shahid from poetry, وَشَاهid مِنَ القرآن, and the shahid from the Quran. What does he mean? The example. He means the example. The word shahid means example first. And from that meaning, that basic meaning of an example, we derive from it that he's a witness, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that is true, and I don't say that's wrong. I'm not denying that part. But it comes from a basic concept, from a root understanding that he is the example, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that this works, and we're supposed to be the example that this works. And if we're not, then we're not doing the job. Meaning, if we are not the example that the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is superior in terms of its value system, in terms of its ethics and morals, and then in terms of the results of what happens to a community when it follows the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then we have nothing to show. No one wants to read books anymore, at least. No one's interested in your theology. No one wants to hear that. When was the last time you opened the door for a Mormon or a Jehovah's Witness? You do what you immediately regret your decision. You don't want to hear the argument. Show me. Show me how you're better. No, but the word's better. Yeah, I understand that. Show me how you're better because of it. I'm not. Okay, then go away. Go become better. Come back. Talk to me later, inshallah, when you are. Because if you're the one who understands the language, who was born and raised in it, and you're not functioning properly, then why would I even want to become a part of this? This group is not working. Why? And you're saying that this is the reason, this is the best thing ever, and that this is pure haqq right inside. Well, why doesn't it seem to work for you? Why do you think it's going to work for me if it didn't even work for you? And you're saying this is a crippling argument. It's a crippling argument, and that's why he is shahid, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He is an example that it works. You see, look at him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Productive, happy, ethical, impeccable, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, morally, right? And close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and all the concept of khilaf, of khalifa, right there in his life, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, clearly. So then, when it's our turn, we have to do the same. And if we fail, he'll just show us, okay, look at them, they did it. And they did it. And there's a lot of examples. And see, he did it, and she did it. They're worth sending you. Why couldn't you do it? What's your excuse? And then you'll lose that argument immediately. And from that we took the martyr. A shaheed is called a shaheed. Why? Because he's an example of someone who gave it all. What's more valuable than life itself? Nothing. Nothing's more valuable than life itself. Even if they tell you something, no, nothing is. It's all, fun and games until the neck goes flying. As long as the neck is on the head and you can, it's all right. The moment you tell me that I'm going to lose my life, things is a different conversation from that moment forward. As long as I'm going to live, you're not going to take my life, we can talk about anything, really. Everything is replaceable. Except life. You can't replace life. You can survive without limbs. You can survive without so many other things. You may not be happy, but you can survive. But then what about life? Life is irreplaceable. You can't replace it. So he who gives his life for the sake of Allah, that's an example. Shaheed, that's called a shaheed. That's why he was called a shaheed, not the other way around. The reason we use shaheed for him is because he is an ultimate example amongst us as people, who's someone who's brave enough and strong enough to actually give his life for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, literally, not figuratively. And we're supposed to live for the sake of Allah, right? And if forced to, we die for the sake of Allah. What's better is to live for the sake of Allah, definitely. But someone who dies for the sake of Allah, that takes a lot. That's who is called a shaheed. So, ya ayyuhan nabiyyu, yes?
I know a few friends, it might be sensitive to some people, but they go overseas, and they're like, we're giving our life for Allah, and they go and they die, and they pass away, and
Sure. So there's two things for an action to be accepted, right? There's the intention and the validity of the act itself, correct? Stupid and good intentions don't excuse stupid actions. Good intentions don't excuse stupid actions. Someone is ill, and they have a bad cut on their arm, but there's a person in their family who loves them so much, and they're so kind, and their heart is of gold, and they decide to try a homemade remedy, right? And they put it on, and this person gets an infection and dies. So what do we say? Well, he meant well. No, it doesn't. I don't care if he meant well or not. He should be, prosecuted for this. He has to go to jail for that. Good intentions don't excuse stupid actions. Period. It's as simple as that. Just like a good action, if it has a bad intention, you don't get it either. It's two. You need two things. So you want to go and offer that's a good intention. But is this the right course of action? Do you know exactly what you're doing? Again, ignorance is not excused either.
So did you say إنما الأعمال بالنيات 2 weeks ago?
Sure, but I said the same thing if you remember. Like I explained that. Maybe you weren't there. You need for the acceptance of an action, you need two things. You need the niyyah, the validity. Okay, let me make this simpler. I have the intention of worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So tonight, because I love Him so much, I'm going to pray Isha 5 rak'at inshallah for you. 5. We're going to do 5 because we love Him a bit more tonight. Anyway, and I'm doing it for the sake of Allah. No, your salah is batila, even though you have the best intention. So you need two things. You need the proper intention and the proper action. Now what's easy for us is to get the action right. It's actually easier than the intention itself. I know it sounds weird, but it's actually easier to learn the mechanics, to learn the details, the logistics of how to do something. I can explain to you how to wash your hands, how to stand and do the movements. How do you get the intention perfected? That's hard. That takes a lifetime. That you spend all your life trying to perfect your intention, take everything out of it. But the other way around doesn't help either. Meaning a lot of people have great intentions for the ummah and they do really stupid things. It's not excused. I'm sorry, it's just not excused for anyone. We're going to do something, we have to watch out for both. Do we have the right intention? And is what we're doing correct? Is it wifq? Is it parallel and based on the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ? Is this what they would have wanted? Is this based on their teachings? Or is it just something I was told and then the intention doesn't make a difference?
Sorry, I just want to clarify because
go ahead.
You mentioned that
the
best is shahada is to give your life away, and that's why I'm saying some people can take that and I'm going to give my life away for Allah, and then but it's like. So
whenever the opportunity is given, which it's probably not right now in almost any situation, or maybe few situations in certain places, but that's very rare. See, the thing is, living for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is much more valuable than dying for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when shahada is something that is going to happen, shuhada are different types. People who die of diseases and car accidents, people who die difficult deaths, these are shuhada of al-akhirah at least. But actually to go fight and be in combat for the sake of Allah and then dying for the sake of Allah, that's very different. There's a lot of different, there's many rules and conditions that apply to someone who's going to do that anyway. So before you go and die for the sake of Allah, but does anyone go and fight with the intention of dying? No, you're never supposed to go do that. Anyway, like you don't go, even if it's combat, no one goes into a willing, hoping to die. Even some of the narrations that we have in the seerah from Sahaba who say it, there's weakness to the actual literal understanding of that. The Prophet ﷺ يقول لا تسألوا الله لقاء عدوكم. Don't ask Allah to ever meet your enemy. واسألوا الله العافية, and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for afiyah, mean for there to be no war at all. You're not hoping to die, but if we have to, then we will. And that's the idea here. So for someone actually to leave going, I want to go die for the sake of Allah, he's probably already, that's something wrong in the way he's looking at things. You're not supposed to be willing or wishing to go die. You're supposed to be wishing to live for the sake of Allah. But if you need to bear arms, then you will. And that is so rare in today's cases that I can't even give you an example that would be worthy of discussion. The first thing he was described with sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in the ayat is shahid. He's an example, alayhi salatu wasalam, of how this way of life works, how it brings you what you're looking for, allows you to achieve what you want to achieve. It brings you the happiness and the success of this life, and it brings you the happiness and success of the hereafter. He is our shahid, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So love him and fear him. So love him, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, follow him and fear him as well. Because Yawm al-Qiyamah, if we don't make this work, he is a standard that we're held to. We're held to his standards, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Look at this is your example. Were you able to live like him? Why not? What was harder for you that wasn't hard for him? What ease did he have that you did not? Wahi, well, it was right there in front of you. The same thing I told him, I made sure it arrived at your doorstep. You could pick it up and you could read it. His life, every personal aspect of it I told you about. Did he not just tell us about some of the most difficult? No one wants their secrets exposed. The Prophet ﷺ's life secrets were exposed in the Quran, recited to Yawm al-Qiyamah. And things that are even more specific and detailed, the Ummahat al-Mu'mineen told us about. The mothers of believers came and told us about them one by one. Things that are very, very personal that you don't want people knowing about. None of us do, but alayhi salatu wasalam had to go through it because he's a shahid. He's the example, alayhi salatu wasalam, for us. That's number one. Second, وَمُبَشِّرًا. He is the bearer of glad tidings, or he brings good news. See, before he is a nadhir, he's always a bashir, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Before he brings you the warning, he brings you the tabshir. Even though you may say, well, isn't it more important to tell you, to warn you, than to tell you the good news? Yes, when we're talking theologically. When we're talking about his lifestyle, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the roles he carried, no, he was a mubashir before he was a nadhir. He was coming to tell people that, be at ease. There's great things waiting for you. There's a lot of happiness. There's a lot of bliss. There's a lot of fortune that is coming your way. Your Lord is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the biggest act of bishara. That's the best good news you'll ever have. Akbar bushra, the biggest great news you'll have is that your Lord is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is Ar-Rahman Jalla Jalaluhu, who is Ar-Rahim, who is Al-Kareem, who is Al-Jawad, who is Al-Latif and Al-Wadud subhanahu wa ta'ala. Knowing that brings ease to the heart. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most merciful, the most forgiving. He is the most generous, the unique subhanahu wa ta'ala, the loving, the most beloved. When you know that, that brings love to your heart and ease, that inshallah something great is going to happen because that's your Lord. But He also is Nadhira sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He will also warn us, bring us a warning. See, that's how He started His da'wah, by the way, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. When you read the seerah, when He first went public with Islam, and He was no longer selective, He wasn't just choosing people and speaking to them, He started speaking publicly. He would say, قُولُوا لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ تُفْلِحُوا. Say La ilaha illallah and you will be successful. قُولُوا لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ تَسْعَدُوا. Say La ilaha illallah and you will be happy. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, this is how He began the da'wah. And then He went into the issues that are more difficult to speak of. Nadhira, tell us that, yeah, but the flip side of this is very ugly. When you think about it, why is it like that? Why couldn't it have been Jannah if you do well, and just non-existence if you didn't? And I think about that and I'm wondering, how motivated would anyone be to do anything good if that was the equation? Because at the end of the day, whatever's happening in the hereafter, afterlife, there's no way for you to physically put your hand on it and test it out so that you're scientifically 100% sure of it. It's a matter of iman bil ghaib wa shahada. It's a matter of logic. It's a matter of you accepting something later to come that makes sense to you. It's iman. You have to have that leap of faith. You have to have that belief. So if I told you that at the end, either you're going to Jannah or nowhere, but yeah, it's pretty good right now. I don't know about the hereafter, but what's the worst that could happen? I'm not here anymore? Whatever. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made this choice extremely easy. Because when you look at the two outcomes, they couldn't be farther apart. They couldn't be more opposite than they actually are. So it's either Jannah or it's Nar. This is a no-brainer. There's no reason for you to think about this. What are you thinking about? What options are you contemplating about? This is not choosing a green or red car. This is either Jannah or Nar. It's an immediate choice. Obviously Jannah. Of course, eternity in the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Punishment and suffering and pain. Of course, that's not what I want. I can't put up with the smallest amount of it in dunya. I'm working around the smallest amount of discomfort in dunya. I don't want to be in any discomfort at all. We go out of our way. We will spend hours planning to make sure that there is no discomfort in the next maybe couple of weeks. If we have a plan or going somewhere, try to every detail. And you think about it. Will it be comfortable? Will the seat? What about water? Are we going to the bathroom? What about sleeping at night? Will I have my own space? You're thinking about all the details. So it's not about pain. It's just any form of discomfort. We don't want it. But then you're okay with Jahannam? How are you okay with Jahannam then? How is Jahannam not enough for number one priority? How are we not planning things out so that there's no discomfort at all then? Doesn't make sense unless we're not 100% sure about what we're doing. Unless there's a lack of iman, which all comes back to that at the end. You can argue as much as you want and talk about deen forever. It comes back to one simple: either you believe in the part of the equation that talks about resurrection and recording of actions and consequences, or you don't. There's really nothing else to this equation. If you do, then you're fine. You'll be able to walk to the end of the line. And if you don't, then wallah, it's a waste of everyone's time. So Shahid, he's an example. Mubashir, and he's the bearer or carrier of glad tidings, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Wa nadhira, he's a warner of punishment, alayhi salatu wasalam. Wa da'iyan ila Allah, and he is someone who calls people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is the job description of all the anbiya, alayhimus salatu wassalam. All the prophets did this is what their job was. Da'iyan ila Allah. They called people to the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Call people to Allah in whatever form, and to the love of Allah, to the belief in Allah, to whatever you want to talk, meaning it's left open in the Quran here. Linguistically, da'iyan ila Allah is not a literal phrase. How do you call someone to someone? You call someone to answer someone, to speak to someone, to follow someone, to be similar to someone, to love someone, to hate someone. That's what you do. Da'iyan ila Allah, what does he mean? literally doesn't work. So it's an estimated meaning. You call Allah, the Prophet calls people to the way of Allah, to the teaching of Allah, to the message of Allah, to the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How does he do it, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? One more time, just to come back to the same concept, just one more time. You see, the type of da'wah that I'm doing right now is maybe 2% of da'wah, which is the da'wah of talking. It's not that, it's not as important as we think it is. Really isn't. Even though the focus on lessons and durus and so, it's really not that important. And it's not the most, it's not the main part of how da'wah is done. It is role modeling. What actually da'wah is role modeling. If you don't believe me, have kids one day, or if you have kids, you know what I'm talking about. You can sit your child down and speak to them for 15 hours about something. They will maybe absorb 1% of what you just said. That is if they don't completely shut you off and absorb the opposite just to spite you later. But if you role model for them, if you show them how things are done, so let's say you're you want your child not to be a violent kid, or you want them to be respectful, right? There are two ways to do this. There is you to sit down and explain to them the importance of respect. You can prepare a khutbah, a nice long khutbah. You can phone me and I can prepare for you all the ayat, and you recite to them the ayat and tell them the translation, and then you can read to them all the ahadith that the Prophet ﷺ said, and then you can go move on to the Sahaba and how they, and then you can give them some examples of the tabi'een, and then you can tell stories about how this works, right? The child is sitting there for an hour and a half and he understands nothing of what you're talking about. I remember I brought Ahmed once, like I think 6 months ago, to come to my Surat Halaqah. So he sat up front and I spoke for an hour, and I'm walking home with him. I said, so Ahmed, so what did you learn today? And of course I'm thinking to myself, because I talked about loyalty, I talked about role modeling. He said, I don't know, there was a man and a horse, and I remember, like men and horses. I don't know what else we were talking about. And then there's another way. There's you're actually showing him how you treat your wife, showing them how you're not violent and how you're respectful, and how you listen. And then even if one day they have a violent urge, they'll always recline, and they'll always go back to whatever it is that they observed in their lives time and time again. And we know that the opposite exists, because if all you have to do is just talk to a psychologist about this. They'll give you the harsh truth about it all. Someone who grows up in an abusive family is 85% more likely to be abusive in their marriage, no matter how much they believe that violence is horrible. It's a very, very sad thing that they could be totally convinced that violence is a bad thing and abuse is completely unacceptable, but they're 85% more likely to do it. The studies are, I've talked about this time and time again. Why? Because it's role modeling that counts. It's what you see, not what you hear. I sit here and I talk and I talk and I talk. Maybe 15% is picked up, and the effect of it is temporary, it kind of falls up, but behavior makes a difference. That's why sallallahu alayhi wa sallam kana طويل السكت عليه الصلاة والسلام. He was silent for long periods of time. قليل الكلام, he spoke very little. يتكلم بجوامع الكلم. When he spoke with lots of meaning, the small numbers of words. قل آمنت بالله ثم استقم. Summarizing the few words. Why? Because sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is not interested in talking. Unlike many of us, there's a million people like me, better than me. Write Surat AlAhzab, Tafseer in English, and a million guys with the same lihya and the same attitude, acting like they know what we're talking about. But then, okay, bring someone who can actually practice this stuff. Bring someone who actually role models it for people in terms of their khuluq, and their suluk, and their hal, and the way that they are, and the way that they behave, and the way that sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, there was something to him more than what he said. You just observed him sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and you were impressed. يقول علي قال من رآه بديهة هابه. He who sees him immediately has hayba for him. He is intimidated by this man. ومن خالطه معرفة أحبه. And he who starts to live with him more closely loves him sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. All you have to spend more time with him, and then you fall in love with this man. You love him. Why? Because of just this how he is, of his demeanor, of his rapport, of his character, of his genuinity. He was a genuine person. You could feel the genuine. We can pick up on these little things, by the way. And human beings, we're very sensitive socially. We can pick up hypocrisy and genuinity quite quickly. And it's hard. Our instincts will tell us all the time, there's something's not right there. You're not sure what it is, but it's something we're quick on these matters. Kids are too. Yani sometimes someone says something you can almost swear it's a lie. You don't know how. You just I don't know. I'm not sure. Yani, subhanallah, people they radiate these things out. It's not what they say. It's what they do. It's how they practice things, how they live their lives. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was da'iyan ilallah. Of course he was, but wallah, the major focus wasn't what he said. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Actually, when you study all the hadith, if you buy Jam' al-Fawaid, like the book, and it has 11,000 hadith. You look at it, this is all he says in his life. How much do we talk every day? They were literally every word he said was people tried to record, but they didn't have like phones to come and slap it for 24 hours. It was just whatever they could remember. When you look all the hadith together and you count maybe 23 years of his prophecy, he didn't talk that much. He actually didn't talk that much at all, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because you start looking, well, he didn't maybe talk maybe for 8-9 minutes a day. And besides that, it was action. It was when he got down into the trench and put the sand on his back and walked up sallallahu every single day for 15 days. It's when sallallahu alaihi wasallam was given his part of the bounty or the loot after a battle, and then he gave it away to people before he went home, and went home empty-handed. Didn't even take with him like some dates or something to feed his family. This is what they saw from him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When they walked by the masjid any time of the night, they could see someone standing. They come close, and it was Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam standing making prayer. Well, they were all sleeping. When they in the middle of battle, he was always the closest. يقول علي كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أقربنا إلى العدو. He was the closest one to us, to the enemy. He wasn't standing behind in his tent, acting like he was, running things or taking. No, he was right there in front. صلى الله عليه وسلم. كان إذا حمي الوطيس احتمينا برسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. And when things got really, really scary, we would kind of stand behind him صلى الله عليه وسلم, looking for refuge for a moment. صلى الله عليه وسلم. So they got to see someone who said and actually did more than what he said, right? He practiced way more than what he actually said. And fi'luhu sharif sallallahu alaihi wasallam is way more valuable than qawl, even though both are valuable, extremely valuable. But fi'luhu, what he did sallallahu alaihi wasallam, made the difference long term for the Sahaba, because they couldn't just change after he passed away sallallahu alaihi wasallam and do their own thing. They watched him. They couldn't be, because you can always interpret words, can't you? You can always bend words. Someone says something, you can always kind of find a way out of what he said, a way to understand it, and that suits me. But you can't bend actions. Actions are actions. He did it, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's what he did. We lived with him, we saw what he did. I can't run away from that. I have to shahid, right? Again, he's an example. But wada'iyan ilallah. He's someone who called people to the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whether he did it with what he taught, what he explained in the Quran that he brought, and the hadith that he explained to us, or whether he role modeled it for us, alayhi salatu wasalam. And this is such a valuable thing, role modeling. As parents, as educators, as Muslims, you want to be a da'i ila Allah, you want to work for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you want to be employed by Allah Jalla Jalaluhu, just like the prophets were, then be a role model for Muslims. Don't focus on what others are doing, focus on how you can be the best you can be. You walk in, you see all the shoes everywhere. Don't talk to people to pick it up. Go pick it up yourself, because that's what you think that would be the best course of action, wouldn't it? Wouldn't that be the best course of action if you actually pick it up yourself and clean it? That means you're the best you can be. Role model. You can't, then hold your tongue. If you can't be the best you can be, if you can't be the best role model for Muslims like he was, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then maybe hold back your criticism. Maybe it's better that way, because we're not getting anywhere with that. That doesn't take us anywhere. But be the best role model you can be. Be the best person. Whatever you think is missing, go do it. Go do the best you can do. Go offer it yourself. Don't sit around asking, why isn't this being offered? Why isn't that being done? And where is this and where is that? Just go do. Yahi, this is not helping. We've been talking for like 120 years, at least, just talking. We're saturated with talk. No one wants to hear anymore. Literally, no one wants to turn on his channel and listen to a sheikh talk anymore. People are tired of listening to talk. What they need is some role modeling. And I think that's what's going to make the change. In the next generation or two, it's going to make the change. Is the practice, it's the actual conviction through actions that will make the difference. That's the fourth. The fifth and final, and this is my favorite, وَسِرَاجًا مُنِيرًا. What is siraj? Siraj is a lamp in Arabic. Why? Because it radiates. So the concept of siraj is that it radiates. To make that more clear, sirj, when you sit on the horse, why is it called sirj? Because when you sit on it, it's an animal. So he's breathing. So the whole thing is radiating. It's moving. There's a wave-like movement when you're sitting on the horseback, on the sarj, on the saddle that they have. So the word sarj has a concept of a bit of radiation. So sirajan means something is radiating, something is vibrating, something is being produced that may not be seen. Something that is being produced may not be, you can't see it or you can't put your hand on it, but it's there. The presence of it is strong, even though you can't put your hand on it. Munira, that is enlightening. So he, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is a siraj. He's a vibrating source of light, alayhi salatu wasalam. Meaning you didn't really have to sometimes talk to him. Again, this is all coming back to the point that I'm trying to make through these ayat. All you had to do is sit beside him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Maybe if you put it, just being in his vicinity, alayhi salatu wasalam, you would find what you were looking for. And how many times in the seerah do you read the stories where that happened time and time again? Where Husayn ibn Salam, one of the scholars of the Jewish tribes in Medina, would bring his son, and they would go after a full night of agreeing to how they were going to debate with this new guy who's calling himself a prophet, how they were going to debate with him and prove him wrong and prove that he doesn't know what he's talking about. And they had all the points they took from the Torah and from the Tanukh and from the Talmud, and they took everything that they needed, and they were prepared to argue against him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And they get up and they spent all night, and they go to him in the early morning, hadn't slept all night, and they're ready to end this once and for all and to prove that he doesn't know what he's talking about. And they have a long list, and they've been talking about it the whole way, preparing how they were going to do this. The father's telling the son, you start, I'll start, we'll say this, you'll say that, all that stuff. They knock on the door, he opens up, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and Husayn says, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa annaka rasuluhu, and the kid freaks out. What about, قال يا بني, oh my son, انظر إلى وجهه, look at his face. ما هذا بوجه كذاب. This is not the face of a liar. Sallallahu ala Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Look at him. This is not a liar. Khalas, we don't need this. Throw it out. Throw the plan and the word. Just throw it out. Throw it out. A vibrating source of light, a radiating source of light. Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Umar al-Khattab used to tell us, كلما حلت بي مصيبة ذكرت أمورا. Every time something horrible happened to me, I remember a number of things. The first thing I remember, ذكرت أنها لم تكن في ديني. Remember that this difficulty wasn't something that made me lose my own faith. I didn't lose my faith over it. This difficulty that came, I still have my Islam at least. وذكرت أنها لم تكن أعظم مما كانت. I remember that it could have been worse. It always can be worse. It could have been worse. ثم ذكرت مصابي بفقد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. And then I remember the biggest musibah that ever happened to me is the day I lost the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم. And he's no longer here. قال ولم يزل في المسلمين أن أعظم ما أصيبوا به فقد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Until the day of judgment, it will continue to be that the worst thing that ever happened to the Muslims was the fact that the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم passed away. That you and I did not get to sit with him عليه الصلاة والسلام. We didn't get to speak with him. We didn't get to experience him عليه الصلاة والسلام, even for a split second, for a moment. We didn't get to. And if you don't feel right now that this is the biggest loss of your life, and if we don't feel that this is the worst thing that ever happened to us, that we were not fortunate enough, that we didn't get the suhbah of Rasulullah, you get to sit with him, speak to him, listen to him, and be with him even for a small moment, within a speck of time, that we don't know, we haven't really understood much about this deen. He would say, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the hadith made by Imam Muslim, قال يأتي من أمتي أناس يؤمنون بي ولم يروني. There will become people at the end of time who will believe in me and they've never seen me. يود أحدهم لو رآني بماله وأهله. Some of them, these people, will wish or they will hope that they could see me and sacrifice their wealth and their families. I mean, they're willing to give away everything had they just been given a moment to sit with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
And
yes.
Is there a promise of Jannah, do you think?
Of what?
Promise of Jannah?
Inshallah.
If we would be in heaven, will we be able to?
Yes.
Do you think?
Yes, of course. Yes, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is definitely a promise, inshallah, of someone going to Jannah. Yes, inshallah, I do too. Make dua for me that inshallah we get, both of us and everyone here inshallah gets to go and see him sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But that is the final, that is the point. That if we don't feel that the biggest loss of our lives is that we didn't get to be with him sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and every day that goes by we think about that, I just wish for a moment just for a split second, got to sit and look at his face, alayhi salatu wasalam. For a moment, Amr ibn Absa, when he came and he met the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he met him only for a few moments. And they talked very, very briefly about the deen. And he told him, go, ya Amr ibn Absa, come back when I become powerful. And he said, okay. So Amr ibn Absa, he started to walk backwards. So the Prophet ﷺ understood the idea, so he stood there looking at Amr ibn Absa. Right? And Amr ibn Absa is walking backwards, and they're asking, what are you doing? قال قلت في نفسي لعلي لا أراه بعد اليوم. I said to myself, I may not see him again after this day. فأحببت أن أملأ عيني من وجه رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. So I wanted to fill my eyes by looking at his face صلى الله عليه وسلم for as long as possible. So the Prophet just stood there, and he didn't want to break his heart or walk away and look away, and until Amr ibn Absa couldn't see him anymore, and then he continued to walk. عليه الصلاة والسلام. Someone passing away and causing the pain that he caused to people who are extremely intelligent and extremely committed, like Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman. Read the story when he passed away, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and look at these people as they're falling to pieces. Why? Because of the value of what his presence meant. His presence, forget about any other detail regarding what he did, alayhi sallam, just the presence. The fact that he's no longer here was something that was disabling to them. They couldn't see themselves wanting to continue to live anymore. What's worth living if he's not around, alayhi salatu wasalam? If he's not here for us to share our lives with, why would I want to continue? I'd rather just die right now, or wish I was dead if he's not here, alayhi salatu wasalam. وَسِرَاجًا مُنِيرًا. It's a Quranic phrase. It's not, I didn't make it up. He is sallallahu alayhi wasallam, because see, if this figure of speech had come in the ayat without everything before it, meaning Ya ayyuhan nabiyyu inna arsalnaka sirajan munira, without shahidan wa mubashiran wa nadhiran wa da'iyan ila Allah, without all these jobs, just all these description of his job, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, meaning you're an example, you are a bearer of glad tidings, you are a warner of punishment, and you are a role model, an educator to them, which is all his roles, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, put in one. Then you could say Siraj al-Munir is just a figure of speech. He is just a source of light, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the meanings that he teaches. But no, those came before. So really there was no point of bringing this word up if it didn't have a separate meaning. I understand what I'm saying? There was no point of it being there if it didn't have a meaning that was separate from the other meanings before it. In the Quran, there's nothing that is just repetitive for no reason. Everything in the Quran brings an additional meaning. So what does Siraj al-Munira bring to this equation more than Shahid, Mubashir, Nadir, and Da'iyan ila Allah? Everything is covered. Siraj al-Munira is just an issue of character. It's just something that you can't understand, neither can I. But we can weep that we didn't get to understand it. Just something about his presence, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, about his heart. Something about just being beside him, staying with him for a day. Just being close to him. Just something about him, alayhi salatu wasalam, different from everyone that you met. You would meet no one else like him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, except those who actually are like him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But yes, those who are like him, will be like him. Those who live their lives up to that standard, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give that to. Yes, you have met people in your life that are Siraj Munir. People that just radiate that light. You're beside them and you just feel like you want to continue to be beside them, and then they pass away or they move away and you feel so bad. A scholar or a teacher or a father or an uncle or a friend, someone just had that special thing about them, different than everyone else. Yes, and those who live like him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, will be like him, alayhi salatu wasallam, will take that special thing, that special charisma that he had, alayhi salatu wasallam, but everything about him. People enjoying just being there, even though they're not really like him. يقول أنس فوالله لا عملت بعمل رسول الله ولا بعمل أبي بكر وعمر. I never did the deeds of Rasulullah or Abu Bakr or Umar, ولكني أحببتهم, but I loved them. فعلمت أنه بحبي لهما أحشر معهم. فعلمت أني بحبي لهم أحشر معهم. I found out, the Prophet ﷺ explained it, that if I love them, I'll be able to be with them يوم القيامة. فما فرحت لي بشيء فرحي بهذا. Nothing made me happier than the fact that I knew that if I loved them enough, I would be able to be with them. Why? Bilal is passing away radiallahu anhu, and they look at him and he's in extreme pain, but he's smiling. فقالوا ما لك تضحك, why are you laughing? فقال غدا ألقى الأحبة, tomorrow I meet the beloved ones, محمدا وصحبه. I see Muhammad and his crew tomorrow, and I'll leave this and I got to go with him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, looking forward to be with him, alayhi salatu wasallam. وَسِرَاجًا مُنِيرًا. Some of the most beautiful, probably one of the most beautiful descriptions of his character. A lady by the name of Sumayra, after the day of Uhud, and the confusion happened and people weren't sure if he actually survived sallallahu alaihi wasallam or he didn't survive. She starts to walk out of Medina towards Uhud, and she's looking in concern, and people are seeing her, and every time they see her they give her condolences, and they feel bad. They look down, يعني رحمهم الله, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy upon them. فتقول من ماذا فعل برسول الله, who, what happened to the Prophet? فيقول لا إنما توفي زوجك استشهد زوجك, your husband يعني is a martyr, he passed away. فتقول الحمد لله ذاك ما أراد, alhamdulillah, that's what he wanted, he left with that intention. ماذا فعل برسول الله, what happened to the Prophet? فقالوا هو بخير, he's fine. قالت لا والله حتى أراه, no, until I see him. And she continues to walk, and then another group, and they offer her their condolences, and they say رحمه الله, who, ماذا فعل برسول الله, what happened to the Prophet? فقالوا لا وإنما ابنك, your son يعني is a martyr. فقال لهذا ربيته, this is why I raised him. الحمد لله ماذا فعل برسول الله, what happened to the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم? فقالوا هو بخير, he is good. فقالت لا, no, حتى أراه, I have to see him. So she keeps on walking. Then another group offer their condolences, and they tell her, يعني may Allah have mercy on him, your brother passed away. قالت الحمد لله تفخر به أمي, my mother will be proud of him. ماذا فعل برسول الله, فقال the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم as well. قالت لا, فمضت تمشي حتى رأته صلى الله عليه وسلم, until he saw him on the يعني coming back. فقالت الحمد لله كل مصاب دون لك جلل يا رسول الله, every musibah, as long as you're okay, is fine, Ya Rasulullah, we can deal with it, as long as alhamdulillah that you're well. Fudala was a man who at the end of after Mecca was conquered and the Prophet ﷺ was doing his first tawaf with the Muslims and the Asnam were taken down, he decided that he was going to kill him, and he took a knife and he put it in his pocket, and he's walking behind and they're doing labbaik Allahumma labbaik, and he's saying labbaik Allahumma, tried like everyone else, and he's walking through people, finding his way to, trying to come close, and then he comes close to the Prophet ﷺ and he's holding on to his knife and he's ready, and the Prophet ﷺ turns around. And Fudala because he's not sure what to do. قال فرفع يده صلى الله عليه وسلم, put his hand up. فقلت يضربني, I said he's going to hit me. ثم أخذ يمسح على صدري, he started to put his hand like this on my chest, saying اتق الله يا فضالة, have taqwa فضالة. Smiling, يقول مبتسم, he's smiling at my face. اتق الله يا فضالة, اتق الله يا فضالة. قال فبقي يمسح ويقولها, he kept on saying it and putting, قال قبل أن يضع يده على صدري كان أبغض الناس إلي, before he put his hand on my chest, I hated him more than I hated anyone in my life. قال فما أن رفع يده عن صدري, in the moment after he did, then he put فما من أحد أحب إليه, and I loved no one more than I loved him صلى الله عليه وسلم. I took out the knife and I threw it away. And he said lots of poetry, and it's a known story, you can look back at in the seerah. Sirajan Munira صلى الله عليه وسلم. May that be something that we all feel the true loss of, that Sirajan Munira sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. وَبَشِّرِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, and O Prophet, give the mu'mins the glad tidings, bear with them, or offer them the good news, or offer the believers the good news, بِأَنَّ لَهُمْ, that they will have from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala فَضْلًا كَبِيرًا, a great bounty and a great reward. So this is for you, inshallah. Say inshallah, ameen. Inshallah, all of this is offered for you and for me, inshallah. That you believe in him, subhanahu wa ta'ala. You believed in his message, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends the good news to all of us. That fadlan kabira, that a great bounty and reward is waiting for all of us. And the final command he was given in this chapter, and I'll end with it. وَلَا تُطِعِ الْكَافِرِينَ وَالْمُنَافِقِينَ. Now, did we hear something like that before? Yes. So go back to the beginning, you find the exact wording, right? When I talked about the introduction, go back to the introduction of this surah, because I talked about it in detail. Don't obey the disbelievers and the hypocrites. Don't obey them. Don't obey them doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to tell you to do something, they're going to do it. Don't obey means don't be like. Don't be similar as well. Ta'ah is not just someone commanding you and you following the command. Ta'ah is also doing whatever they're doing, being similar to them, following their footsteps. وَلَا تُطِعِ الْكَافِرِينَ وَالْمُنَافِقِينَ. Don't walk down the road they want you to walk. Don't be sucked into their narrative. Don't let them beat you with their backstabbing, with their slandering, and with their bad words that they have to say. They backbit against him, right? After he married Zainab, they started to speak about him. They started making him feel bad. لا تطع الكافرين والمنافقين. Don't let them change you. Don't let them harm you. Don't follow them. Don't be changed by them. وَدَعْ أَذَاهُمْ, and leave their harm where it is. Don't absorb their harm. Leave it where it is. It's worthless. It doesn't mean anything to you. Well, it's a beautiful piece of advice. Seriously, one of the best pieces of advice. وَدَعْ أَذَاهُمْ. Someone harms you, just leave it there. Visualize it being garbage. Just leave it. Just don't take it. Don't take it home. And don't digest it. Just leave it. It's harm. There's nothing in it. There's nothing in it. وَدَعْ أَذَاهُمْ. Don't let it get to you. Don't let it change you. Don't let it harm you. Don't let it. وَدَعْ. Da means leave. Literally, in Arabic, it means leave. أَذَاهُمْ, their harm. How do you leave their harm? Literally, that means it has no meaning. Linguistically, there's no meaning to it. You have to understand it figuratively, or else meaningless. وَدَعْ أَذَاهُمْ is just a figure of speech. Don't let it get to you. People are going to tell you the worst things. It's just how we are. It's just how we function. We never say good things. We very rarely do. It's always going to get. If you do something wrong, you're going to hear about it. And not once, you'll hear about it many times, maybe till the day you die, he'll keep reminding you of it. You do good things and people forget about it instantaneously. But bad things, the bad criticism, the bad words, the negative energy, the negative criticism will always come. وَدَعْ أَذَاهُمْ. Leave it. Just leave it where it is. This is where it was said, and the words fell to the ground, walk away. Walk away. وَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ. And depend upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Make sure that your dependence is upon Him subhanahu wa ta'ala and upon no one else. And if you do that, and understand how you can see how this is so related to the story before. After he suffered through that experience of doing what he was told and then living through the backlash he knew was going to come. Look, don't obey them. Don't change the way you are because of them. Don't let their harm get to you. Depend upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَكَفَى بِاللَّهِ وَكِيلًا. And the only one you ever need to depend upon is Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. You don't need anyone else. Depend upon Him and He'll take care of you. And you'll be taken care of. Sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. This is for us. He is told to do things and then it's related to us. I'll stop with that inshallah, and in the next maybe, how much do we have now? 9 minutes. I'll share with you another hikmah. Last week we began talking, there's a hikam called al-Hikam al-Ata'iyya for Ibn Ata'illah al-Sakandari. And he is a known scholar who wrote around 264 or 74 pieces of wisdom. I can't remember anymore. I think they're 64. He wrote a number of wisdoms, and these wisdoms are cared for by scholars throughout the eras based on the depth and the profoundness that they had. And last time I shared the first one. Today I'll start with the second one. I'll probably not be able to explain the whole thing, maybe half of it. He says, rahimahullah, he said, إرادتك التجريد مع إقامة الله لك في الأسباب من الشهوة الخفية وإرادتك الأسباب مع إقامة الله إياك في التجريد عطاط عن الهمة العلية. I'm going to explain it in English. It's a bit complex in English. إرادتك التجريد, for you to want to be in a state where you don't have to deal with the logical rules of the world, where you want to be in a state of mysticism, of closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and a state where you're dealing with something that is beyond logic and beyond the rules that govern the universe. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts you in a situation that is governed by logic, is basically a hidden desire or whim, shahwa khafiyya. That's what it is. And for you to want to be within the world of logic, if you wanting to make sense and to work with the rules of the universe, at a time that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put you and required you to do something that does not follow those rules, is you falling from a higher role that He gave you subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the literal translation of this wisdom. Now what does it mean? It talks about the balance. As Muslims, we're required to have a balance between two things. Alam al-asbab and alam al-tajreed. Alam al-asbab is the world that is governed by all the laws of the universe that we have. Every single law. From gravity to causality to the laws of just making a living if you work well and not making a living if you don't. Just as simple as that. And then there's alam al-tajreed, the world where these laws don't apply. Where Siraj Munir becomes a concept. Where there's something that doesn't follow these laws. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not asking you to go out there and work with the world, but He's asking you to look into yourself and do acts of worship that bring yourself closer, like salah. When you think about it, is salah a productive hour? From a logical perspective, is it a productive amount of time that you're spending? When you sit there and you start reading the Quran, ayat that you read time and time again, you're not necessarily thinking about it, you're just reading it for the ajr that you get for reading the Quran. Or you sit there and you do tasbih, subhanallah, alhamdulillah, la ilaha illallah, you're not necessarily even thinking about all of it. That is something that when you think about it from a logical perspective may not be the most productive hour of your day. But he's talking about these two types of functioning. And then if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you a mission or puts you in a situation where you have to live by the laws of the universe, the logical laws that dictate everything, and then you leave that, and then you go look for something else. You look for an alim of tajreed. You want to be in tajreed. You want to be in a state where you're just worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mystically, spiritually, on an emotional level where you're not actually producing anything at all. That is a hidden desire. That's a shahwa khafiyya. That is, because I'll give you the example. You're a husband, you're a father, and you have a job. Now, in order for this to work, you have to raise your children, you have to treat your wife properly, have a proper relationship with her, and you need to do well in your job. You have to do your work properly, and you have to make sure, and that is the laws of the universe. This is you taking all the asbab, taking care of all the rules, and making sure that you want. Now, if you were to say, I don't want to do any of that, I want to sit and I want to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You come to the masjid and you just spend the majority of your time doing salawat and doing tasbih and dhikr and reciting the Quran. That's all you want to do. You have no interest in doing anything else. And if I ask you, why are you doing it? You say, well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the governor he governs the universe, and so He can just give me money if He wills. He can take care of my children if He wants. He can take care of my marriage if that's His desire, if that's His hikmah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He'll take care of all that. Correct? No, of course not correct, but that's what He would say. Is that acceptable? Is that a type of behavior that is okay? Doing that, you could say, well, look how pious this person is. Look how pious this person. He is always praying. He's always reading. He's always invocating Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, remembering Him. But is he doing that in a time where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put him in a different place and given him a different mission where he should be obeying the laws of the universe that He created Himself subhanahu wa ta'ala? And if he is, then this is not an act of piety. He is not doing this because he loves Allah more. No, he's doing it because he has a hidden desire deep in his heart. I mean, the intention isn't even good. Even the intention isn't actually good. He thinks it is. He thinks that the intention is also, I want to worship Allah. No, you don't. There's something hidden inside that you just don't want to acknowledge. You're running away from doing your job. Either you're too scared to fail, or you feel like you can't do it, or you want people to praise you for doing something else, for sitting in the masjid all day and being but not taking care of your job. When you see people, and do we not see people like that? Someone who is exhausting his effort in doing things for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and coming and doing qiyam al-layl and fasting and then you look at his home and it's a mess, and the marriage isn't working, and the kids are being taken care of, and his career is going nowhere, and he's not. Why are you looking to do something different than what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put you in to do in the first place? You're in the position of asbab. That's what He put you in the world of. And He required you to do these asbab. Why are you asking for a different state? Why are you trying to run away from that to something different? Now, this is half of the wisdom. That's half of it, because you could misunderstand what I just said right now, and say, oh, so we shouldn't come and do. No, because if you flip it, it's just as bad. وإرادتك الأسباب مع إقامة الله إياك في التجريد انحطاط عن الهمة العلية. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts you in a situation where He asks you for the acts of spiritual worship, when that's what He wants from you. He wants from you to pray, to stand up, even though this doesn't seem the most logical thing to do based on the laws that you were taught and what you're observing around you. But no, go make wudu. Well, I didn't do anything right now. I wasn't working with filth or cement or najasa. I was just all I was doing is I was just sitting at home, and then I let gas out. So I'm going to make wudu. Yes, make wudu. Why? Because this is alim at-tajreed. This is something different. For you to pursue the asbab in that is falling from a higher rank. I'll talk about that inshallah a bit more. Inshallah next week. I'm sorry, I've lost track of time. Subhanakallah bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Jazakumullahu khairan. Barakallahu feekum.